Can you think of a time when you looked at someone and instantly assumed something about them? If you can, you're guilty of some form of prejudice, just like me. I'd be surprised if anyone in this room wasn't guilty of prejudice. Our society is so quick to assume. We judge people we know nothing about by making assumptions with no prior knowledge. Prejudice becomes a major issue when people make it negative. One of the most negative forms of prejudice is racial prejudice. Racial prejudice is when someone has a negative attitude towards another person or group of people based on race, not on direct knowledge or experience. In our society, people are perceived as criminals solely due to the color of their skin. Racial prejudice must be wiped out because whether you realize it or not, prejudice could be the difference between a person living or dying. Harper Lee's award-winning novel To Kill a Mockingbird shows how racial prejudice can lead to the death of an innocent man. The story takes place during the Great Depression in Alabama. It is told from the point of view of the main protagonist, Scout Finch. Scout is an innocent young tomboy who is yet to be exposed to the harsh reality of injustice. Scout slowly realizes the true nature of society as she watches her father, Atticus, defend a black man named Tom Robinson in court. Tom Robinson is put on trial for supposedly raping a privileged white girl, Mayella Ewell. Mayella liked Tom, so one day she tried to seduce him while he was working. When her insanely racist father, Bob Ewell, saw the two, he flipped out and beat Mayella, calling her a whore. To come up with a story for Mayella being beaten, Bob comes up with the idea to accuse Tom of rape. As Tom's appointed attorney, Atticus tries his best to give Tom a fair trial. Atticus undoubtedly proves Tom's innocence, but it does not matter. Tom is found guilty by an all-white jury and sent to a prison farm where he waits to find out if he's sentenced to death. Knowing he'll be put to death, Tom tries to escape but is shot dead by the guards. Racial prejudice was the sole cause of Tom's death. The jury's negative attitude towards blacks stripped Tom of his life. There was absolutely nothing he could do. Harper Lee tells the story from Scout's point of view in order to show the perspective of someone who disregards the social class system. Scout sees people for who they really are no matter what class system they fall under. During Tom's case, she takes a completely objective approach. Unlike the jury, she looks at the evidence, not the color of Tom's skin. Lee uses Scout to highlight the injustice of racial prejudice. Through Scout, Lee wants to convey the lesson of walking in someone else's shoes before judging them. Even after numerous laws against racial prejudice, it is still a huge problem. In our society, people are dying due to racial prejudice just like Tom Robinson. The death of Trayvon Martin is a tragic example of how racial prejudice can end someone's life. The 17-year-old high school student was killed by a racist neighborhood watch coordinator, George Zimmerman. Zimmerman profiled Martin for the color of his skin and shot the unarmed teen dead. The worst part is, Zimmerman got away with it. Our previous president, Barack Obama, responded to Martin's death with the ongoing issue of racial prejudice in mind. Obama talks about how African Americans are racially profiled and how he has personally been racially profiled. Obama later said that the African American community knows there is a history of racial disparities in the application of the United States criminal law, which ends up impacting how people interpret cases. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, since 1976, in cases with white defendants and black victims, only 20 white defendants were executed, while in cases with black defendants and white victims, 287 black defendants were executed. The killing of Trayvon Martin, Zimmerman getting away with murder, and the disproportionate executions of blacks are all examples of how severe of an issue racial prejudice is. Some people may try to argue that the United States justice system is colorblind, but how can it be when the people of the United States aren't? According to a survey created by Stanford University, in 2012, 51% of Americans expressed anti-black sentiments. The jury, comprised of regular United States citizens, decides the fate of a defendant in court. If racial prejudice is influencing their decision, then the United States justice system is influenced by racial prejudice. To stop racial prejudice from killing the innocent and corrupting our justice systems, we must eliminate racial prejudice as a whole. Racial prejudice can be ended through the new generation. If we require racial and cultural classes to be in every primary school across the United States, it will stop the new generation from developing the prejudices that are currently devastating our nation.